This is Duke University.
Mexicans, in thinking about the energy sector, have thought about it for 15 years or so, and in 2013 they amended the Constitution to give the opportunity and the opening for the deployment of private capital in areas previously reserved to the state. And those areas are in oil, in power, in geothermal, and in natural gas. The rollout of the energy sector is taking place in the upstream. That is, they've had two public auctions, most recently on September 30th, of blocks in the offshore. And the second block, the second auction, was won by a Italian oil company, Eni, E-N-I. And another company, the other block, was won by a Mexican company. And the Mexican company, curiously, had as its technical director the former head of Pemex's Exploration and Production Department, or Exploration and Production Business Unit. So if you wanted to read between the lines of that, you might say there's a lot of insider stuff going on. So the winners are going to be international companies and Mexican insiders. One of the questions that some of us are asking is, where will new Mexican oil go? What markets will it serve? Why? Because Mexican oil is heavy oil in general. They're proposing to have public auctions for extra heavy oil. Who wants extra heavy oil when U.S. fracking has produced light oil? So where's that oil going to go? And will it have an effect on pricing? And as we know, oil production radiates out like ripples in a pond and affects the global market. So one of the questions that Mexico is asking is, can we get our oil to Asia? But you have to have a refinery at the other side of the tanker to take that oil. So it's not perfectly clear how Mexico's oil is going to find a market. And keep in mind also that Venezuela produces a similar kind of oil. For me, having looked at Mexican oil sector and having reported on it in my newsletter, Mexico Energy Intelligence, so-called, the big surprise that caught me by surprise was the figure of farmout. This is not a term generally known to the public. Farmout means that if you own, let's say, 1,000 acres, but you only have money to develop 500 acres, you may go to another company and say, hey, with your capital and at your risk, will you develop the other 500 acres? And I get an override. So that concept never occurred to me, that the Mexicans would adopt that, see? And that's a real innovation in the world of national oil companies. So that therein, other national oil companies from around the world may in fact take that detail, that technical legal figure of a farm out, and say, hey, in Nigeria, in Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, we want a farm out in which the national oil company keeps control. It's still its block, its legal authority, but we're getting the benefit of a private oil company taking the other 500 acres. The notion, the very fundamental principle of centralized planning hasn't changed. Now, having said that, can you have big changes? Well, I think we can look to China for that. China has kept to a very strict model of centralized planning, but it has had tremendous changes in the economy that have affected the world. So there's no reason to doubt that that kind of dynamic couldn't happen in Mexico, either from the power side, from the gas side, from the oil side. So the Mexicans are not embracing free market economics. They're embracing centralized planning, as is China. At the same time, like China, they're saying, hey, find a way for private capital to move and create wealth.